here at Storytel, speaking with Icelandic and international best-selling authors in the crime scene. Ragnar is an international phenomenon now for a few years. Author of the celebrated Dark Iceland series. We're actually witnessing here in Iceland kind of a miracle happening around the crime scene in a relatively short period of time. About 5 or 10 years this has been building, and it seems like it's growing and growing. And every year, every couple of years, a new Icelandic writer bursts into the scene and claiming either the princehood or the princesshood of the Icelandic crime scene. How do you see this developing? What's really happening? Why is this happening?
That's a very good question. 20, 30 years ago, we had no crime fiction in Iceland, more or less. So it's really it's very difficult to try to understand what happened. But we had Arnaldur Indriðason in '97 starting this trend, and for some reason, Icelanders started to accept crime fiction because he had his great novels, sort of made them believable. Yeah. And we are more or less all standing on his great shoulders.
Yep.
But yeah, I think just suddenly crime fiction became acceptable in Iceland. You could, it was believable in a way, and of course that's a challenge every time.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to write, at least for me, if you want to write crime fiction in Iceland, to make it as plausible as you can. And as you say, it's been fantastic to see. Every year we have new authors, and we are actually even actively trying to get new authors. As me and Yrsa Segðu, we set up a crime fiction award last year.
Yeah.
To try to get even more people onto the scene, and also to try to preserve the Icelandic language and encourage people to write in Icelandic.
Yeah.
And authors are getting translated little by little, and so it's really just fantastic to see.
Yeah. About yourself, your story is really fascinating also, because also it really doesn't take off from Arnaldur only, at least because you were the youngest translator of Agatha Christie novels here in Iceland.
Yes.
At the very young age of 17.
Yes.
How does a 16, 17-year-old start translating Agatha Christie novels?
It's a crazy idea, and I was at school obviously, and I was thinking of doing something for the summer, and I had been following, I'd been reading Agatha Christie for years actually by then, and was a big fan, and I love to see a book every year before Christmas come out, and I even contacted the publishers as early as October, November every year, and called them to see, what book are you publishing this year, and so they sort of knew me. And then one day I just had the idea, maybe I can actually do this myself. And
how did you contact the publishers of Agatha Christie? Did you just pick up the phone and call?
Yeah, no, it was the Icelandic one,
okay.
Which was Skjaldborg. And so then I thought I would go. I went to see him, and I was so young I didn't have a license to drive, so my mom drove me to see the publisher at Skjaldborg, the Icelandic publishers. And as I say, he sort of knew me from all the phone calls, and I sort of suggested whether I could do a book, and he greeted me very nicely. It was a nice conversation, and he didn't really commit to anything, so I thought, that's the end of it. But a few days later he called me and said, let's try this. and I could pick any book I wanted. So I picked the shortest book I could find in my bookshelves because I had no idea how long it would take to translate a novel. But this was great fun. So we kept doing this for years, and in the end, I had 14 books.
Wow.
And by that time, I was writing my own book, so I had to like basically choose.
But as a boy, did you start reading crime literature, or did that come
Yes.
later?
No, I started as kids do in Iceland reading like Enid Blyton and like young adult thrillers, sort of, crime fiction for kids.
Yeah.
And then I, graduated up to Agatha Christie, but I was probably 12 or 13, so still just a kid. And I just fell in love with Christie, from the first or second book I read.
Right.
And I went through everything I could find in Icelandic in the libraries. And when I'd read everything I could find at libraries, I had to go to the National Library on Saturday mornings with my father and sit and read there in the reading room, because there were books that were so out of print they were nowhere to be read except there.
Right.
And that's how I got through everything that she had been published by her in Icelandic, and then I had to just start reading English.
How large is the Icelandic catalog?
Yeah.
30, 40?
Yeah, 40, 50 maybe.
Yeah.
By that time, maybe 30, 40, and then I translated some of my own later on.
Right.
But yeah, and to this date, not every single book has been translated.
Right.
But she did write, close to 70 novels.
Yeah. Did you start from that? Did you also start reading other authors?
Yes, yeah, I did. Mostly from the Golden Age, from the same era that Christie had been writing, like the 30s, 40s, and there were, some fantastic writers. I can name maybe authors that are not well known today, like Ellery Queen and S.S. Van Dyne, who are American contemporaries of Christie, and they did like similar stories, like these old-fashioned puzzles.
Whodunit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what I grew up with, like old-fashioned whodunits, and I think I try to put a little bit of that into my books.
Right.
And then as I grew older, I started reading more contemporary, like P.T. James, who created Adam Dalgliesh. That was a familiar face on TV screens.
Yeah.
And she is one of my favorite crime fiction authors.
Yeah.
And then more recently, Nordic, Scandinavian crime, like Stig Larsson or Jo Nesbø.
Yeah.
And try to learn and pick up something from everything you read.
That came later. So, how did you set off yourself? What did you? I guess the idea of becoming a writer yourself came pretty early. But how did you plan that? How did you start?
So I had I think probably planned to be a writer from the age of 5 or something. Yeah. Although I didn't, and you grow up and you go to school and you start working and you think, it'll never happen.
Yeah.
But what really pushed me to do it was I had a story that I had started, and then a publisher in Iceland had a competition for crime fiction, and it was the first crime fiction competition in years in Iceland. But the theme of the competition was they were looking for the next, for the Icelandic Dan Brown. And the problem with me was I was writing a book that was, in a totally different.
Right.
I loved Dan Brown. I had read his books, and I'm a big fan.
Not a fantasy thriller.
No, it was. It was very different. But still, I thought, this is an opportunity to, actually finish a book and then send it to someone who will read it. Yeah. And let's see what happens. And that's what I did. I finished it before the deadline and sent it in. And what happened with this competition was there was no winner. They didn't really find an Icelandic Dan Brown. But what they did was they published me and my friend Lilja Sigurðardóttir, who also sent her manuscript into this competition. So out of this came 2 crime authors that became published as a result of this.
Right.
So we have Dan Brown. We have a lot to thank him for.
So and both of you are going really strong, and I guess is Quentin Bates translating the both of you?
So he did the first 5 books for me, And then I moved publishers in the UK, so I have a different one now.
Right.
But he is doing Lilja's books now.
Right.
So he has been a very good supporter of Icelandic crime fiction.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's basically thanks to him as well that my books eventually found, a British publisher, because he was really, and that's same probably with Lilja. He was supporting and
Right.
promoting the books for us.
A regular conduit.
Yes, which is important because he can read Icelandic and
Right.
sort of tell the publishers
Yeah.
whether to publish or not.
Right. But in the meantime, you didn't. Your career didn't take off as a crime writer. You went into law, and now you're also practicing financial law with
Yes.
one of the biggest financial firms here in Iceland.
Yes, it's an interesting mix, and I really enjoy it. I actually enjoy both very much.
Yeah.
I like
Both,
being a
both
lawyer.
of them full of intrigue and mysteries.
Yes, yeah, but very different. And I've tried to keep both law and finance outside of my books, at least for the time being.
Yeah.
Maybe one day I will write like a financial thriller, but that's not on the
Right.
horizon.
You anticipated my next question.
Yeah. But maybe one day. But so far I've tried to keep lawyers out of my books entirely. I think 2 of them have, made an appearance without my approval, basically.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for me to keep this pretty separate.
Right. It's a fascinating scene that has developed around the Nordic noir area literature, with television series, also the Danish and the Swedish and the Norwegian even, and now the Icelandic ones, and more in the making.
Yes. Yeah. I think the people have always been predicting the end of the Nordic noir, both in TV and in books. But it just it's still going strong, and I hope it will keep on doing so. And the TV series just get better and better, and we and there is a lot of still a lot of interest in whether it's Icelandic or Scandinavian crime, which is you can only be thankful for, basically. That this is still such a big.
What's in the works in those areas for your stories now?
For TV or so it's always about to happen, and it's been about to happen for like 5 years.
Yeah.
But now we have these 2 book series that we are working on finding the right home for, and there is strong interest as before, but then nothing happens, and so it's best to say nothing.
In development, yeah.
It's always in development.
Yeah. But in the meantime, maybe when I was looking at the scene, I noticed that one of the TV series that's been made in Iceland actually sort of preempted your space somehow.
Yeah.
It took place in Siglufjörður, but it was made by TV people.
Yeah.
From scratch. And I sort of feel bad for you in that area.
Yes. Well, it's their medium and it's their work, and but I think one day we'll do our own with my series.
Yeah.
I will probably be hopefully be different.
Yeah.
But based on the books.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that will still happen.
Yeah. You mentioned the new awards that you're setting up, and Yrsa and you and Quentin started this Iceland Noir.
Yes.
Yearly here in November, which is still going strong. What sort of input does that give into the scene? Why did you feel it was necessary to start that?
So the idea for Iceland Noir came basically at a crime festival in Britain that we had all been attending for a few years, me and Yrsa and our friends. And the basic idea was basically because our friends from the UK they needed an excuse to come to Iceland. So it was as simple as that to begin with.
Right.
So we said, let's just do our own crime festival here in Reykjavik, because no one has really done it before. And we decided that with, at maybe a few months' notice for the first time, which everyone thought was crazy. We set it up in May, and it happened in November that year.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone really liked it, so we decided to do it again. And this is the 5th festival, I think. Yeah. And we just really enjoy it. It's all voluntary work, and we just hope not to make a loss on it. But the upside is so great. We get all these fantastic authors here, and we also try to include as many Icelandic authors as just want to be involved. Mm-hmm. If an Icelandic author wants to be here, we put him or her on a panel, and it's a showcase for them, because we have publishers, agents, journalists from all around. Yeah. So at worst, this is just a fun weekend for Icelanders to meet their favorite authors, maybe, and for us to meet interesting authors and interact. But at best, this could help someone, launch a career. Yeah. I hope.
Yeah. Do you think, or do you fear that it might become too large?
I don't know. Yeah. As I say, it's always just something we do in our spare time as a hobby, so it cannot become too large.
Yeah. So you have to keep it there.
Yeah. But I think that's also the charm of the festival. It's not too big. Yeah. So we are in Iðnó now, which it's about 150 people maybe. Yeah. And I think we'll just stick to that number. So we sold out all the tickets, and we'll just keep doing that, and try to keep it cozy and nice as it should be in Iceland.
Keep it small and simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you see yourself developing as an author? You mentioned your roots in the whodunit and the meat and potatoes plots of the old masters. Where do you see yourself developing?
Well, I still have some ideas, so I think I will keep writing for a while. When the ideas run out, I will just stop and do something else. But I think, it's probably hard for me to judge, but I sort of think I've been developing a bit into the darkness with every book. It sort of gets a bit darker, which is something that interests me. So what started off as like the first couple of books were maybe like whodunits, more in the Agatha Christie style, but I think it's developing into maybe a bit darker mysteries. But I always keep the whodunit element, if I can. I mean, that's what I love. That's what I love to read. So for me, a crime novel should have a surprise twist at the end. So I think I will, stick to that as well.
Right. There's a lot of interest, of course, in Iceland for this type of writing, which nobody knew there was, before. But you yourself are living proof of Icelanders all the time reading a lot of crime novels. Do you see the readership getting larger, even in these times when people are reading less, even?
Yeah, I actually think so. And it is a concern that people are reading less. And I've seen the statistics, and they don't lie. I mean, people are overall reading less, and that is a concern. But still, I think the love for the crime story is still pretty strong. But I'm also a little bit concerned, for the future, for the language. And so I think we really need to make an effort to keep people reading. And it's not too bad as it is, but I think if nothing is done, if we just if we do nothing, it might become worse. And we need to keep people reading, and we need to keep people writing, and we need to keep kids reading.
Do you think? Yeah. Do you think audiobooks are a good addition to this sort of guardianship, of the language is the living word.
Absolutely, I think so. And I think, and I've just in the year that Storytel has been in Iceland, or almost a year, I'm always meeting people that have been that haven't been reading my book, but then they've sort of discovered them as an audiobook.
Right.
And then they've gone on to buy, because they want the next one, and they buy the next one.
Right.
So I absolutely think every medium basically, it's like everything is helpful. It's sort of everything works together in a way. So if you listen to a book, and then maybe you buy a book, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So the better access you have to books,
Right.
in whatever format, I think.
Right. Sort of like the technology seems to be spreading out the art form. Sort of like music, you used to have works put on a CD, and then you have the live concert also.
Yep.
And there's different ways of getting the same material across.
Yeah. It's the key is always the content, and the medium is just it just changes over time.
Yeah.
Although I think although I hope the books are here to stay, because I love opening a book as well. But but it's always the content, and it doesn't really matter how you get it to the audience. If it's on a book, if it's an e-book or an audiobook, it's always the same.
Yeah.
It's all about the story, really.
Yeah. And quality.
Yes.
Yeah. Ragnar, thanks a lot for stopping by.
Thank you.